Welcome to Turning Hard Times to Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor. Really pleased to have Dr. Quinton Hennigh with me, a well-known economic geologist, known for his considerable success over the years in exploration for major mining companies like Homestake, Newcrest Mining, and Newmont Mining, and more recently, the years that I've learned to know him more in the junior sector, where there's a lot of more freedom for companies. At least if there's money, there's freedom to explore and develop. And so it's been a lot of successful stories that Quinton has been involved in that I have also followed very closely. In fact, many of the names that Quinton follows now at Crescat Capital, where he is employed, the senior analyst there, the technical analyst for the mining projects that Crescat invests in. Many of those I follow, and I should say that Crescat people can see, I think it's every other week, when they can go and get some insights into some of these companies that Crescat invests in, and many of which I invest in, and I would like my subscribers to be updated a little bit, to have Quinton say what he thinks about some of the names. I'd like to start out. Well, first of all, thank you for joining me, Quinton. It's really a pleasure to have you. I know you're not twiddling your thumbs these days, so I'm very grateful to you.
Again. Getting busy, yeah.
All right, so Quinton, I'd like to start out. Well, first of all, just to get your take on the mining industry as a whole. I saw somewhere that I think it's the companies in the in the index, the gold miners in the index that are selling, something like 20% their free cash flow. I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're selling it crazy. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. I've never seen it this depressed, and we're talking about a time when the margins are just tremendous. $3,300 gold, and yet nobody seems to care much in the U.S., at least, about mining companies. So what's your take on what's going on now? Why is this industry so depressed?
There's not a it's not a one answer question.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously
Yeah.
there's a lot of things. Like, I mean, if I had to distill it down to a general view, I would say that there's still a lot of other opportunities out there in the
Right.
investment world that are directly competitive, and more competitive, I'll say, than mining. I mean, it's that simple. Okay. People
Yeah.
see other places to put their money and make money. Well, what do we need to do? Look, you can't fix the rest of the world, or you can't change the rest of the world. You can only fix yourself. And I talked about
Yeah.
this a couple months ago at PDAC. Look, in my view, the mining industry has to do so many things to bring back investors.
Mhm.
It's fundamental things. The whole short selling issue is a big problem
Mhm.
in the junior space, especially. But you could easily point your finger and say, "Well, that's what's brought us down here." No, it isn't. Look, we got to see exploration companies succeed in finding new deposits, but also
Mhm.
selling those deposits. Okay,
Mhm.
we got to see M&A come back. That means that the big miners have to develop a vision to pursue new projects, new growth. If we don't see that, this industry is going to struggle
Yeah.
because that's where the money is. The product of a junior mining company is to make a discovery that's going to get sold. It's that pure and simple. Yes, some junior companies find something and they put it into production themselves, but it's a tough go.
Yeah.
Selling the discovery is the goal, and we need to see M&A come back. Now, we also need to see permitting. Permitting get to a reasonable timeline. When you talk
Mhm.
about 10, 15, 20 years to build a mine
Yeah.
or a discovery, you discount the value. Like you get
Yeah.
an 8% discount, it basically isn't worth anything. You
Yeah.
could find
Exactly. Yeah.
gold bars scattered around the ground, but if you have to permit to pick them up,
Mm.
they're not worth much, right? So we have to see a new permitting regime. We need to see more, we'll say, proactive work in the First Nations and social license aspects to get better and broader acceptance of
Mhm.
our industry so that we can build these new mines. There's so many things, Jay, I could
Yeah.
point to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could add value, but that's just the skinny version, we'll call it.
Well, it seems to me, Quentin, that sometime along the line here, people are going to have to recognize that these mining companies, the ones that are producing now with these margins, are going to have to start paying attention. And especially, I think, if the equity markets continue, the general big equity market, is the Magnificent Seven, and those guys continue to struggle. Fund managers are going to want to go where they can make money. So I think you have to keep your nose to the grindstone, just keep doing the science, the technical stuff, carry it, execute, and then sooner or later, you have to hope and believe that value will be recognized. You guys have to produce value, and what you say, there's a lot of obstructions in the way. I like to think that our current president down here is probably going to help somewhat. I'm hearing that anyway from people in the United States. So let's hope. Let's hope, Quinton. But I want to. I know that you've had a lot of successes, and some of the names that I know you've covered recently, I want to get to. But before we get to those, I would like to get your take on some of the names I believe that Crescat Capital is maybe involved in. You've talked about in the past names that I have in my newsletter that haven't done so well, at least as far as the market's concerned,
Sure.
but
Absolutely.
nonetheless may have had some good success, geological exploration success. And so I'd like to start out with a couple of those. Maybe first I'd would like to ask you about Lion One Metals. It's a company that I've followed for a while. I guess you call it an alkaline project that seemed to have a great deal of potential. As I recall, some incredibly high grades, narrow veins, though. So that makes it more difficult. But as I recall, a very large alkaline system with something like 7 kilometers of strike on surface evidence of it. And now they're in production. As you said, it's a real slog for the juniors to make that transition into production. It's almost better a lot of times for companies to just develop a world-class deposit and then let the big guys who have the expertise and the capital come in and do it. Nonetheless, Lion One is struggling. It seems to me that they're making some progress. But what are your thoughts about Lion One right now with a market cap of about 68 million US money from what I can see?
Yeah, look, they started test mining. I believe it was latter part of 2023, I believe. I might be a year off. It might have been late 2022 when they
Yeah.
pulled the trigger. But anyway, they've been test mining now for a while, okay? And it has been challenging. Putting the declines down, the development drives, trying to cut their teeth around grade control in particular has been a challenge. These are skinny veins or vein networks. They're, tight little fractures, networks of fractures, and trying to figure out exactly where to mine can be challenging at times. But they've made good progress. I guess what I would say right now is if you look on a quarter-to-quarter basis, they seem to be improving.
Mhm.
I really hope that trend continues. There's no promises in life, but I really hope that the company is heading in the right direction. But they are still at a test phase. Okay, what do they need to do to get kind of out of the weeds? I really do think they need to ramp up production. Right now, I think they're doing 300 tons or 300
Yeah.
and some odd tons per day. That's not quite enough to
Mhm.
generate the revenues and the cash flows they need. I think they need to get kind of scale up to maybe 600, 700 tons per day, especially if the grades, the diluted grades that they're seeing remain consistent. That's going to be the necessary target to start making some decent money. Okay,
Yeah.
now what does it take for the company to get there? Look, they are making some progress on a number of things. Like they announced recently, they're going to put a flotation mill or flotation circuit into the
Mhm.
mill. I think that's a good step because that will enhance gold recovery. Means they get more dollar value out of every ton they put through the plant. They also have to get down to some of the higher grade. As we know, the better loads, like the 500 load, are kind of the trunk of the tree, and
Right.
they're at level. So they got to get the declines down into those areas to see that real boost in overall grades.
Mhm.
Are they working in that direction? From what I hear, yes.
Mhm.
Will they make it? I sure as heck hope so. The gold price is certainly helping at this point.
Yeah.
It's really, they're on the right track. I just hope the lenders are patient with them
Yeah.
and they all work in the same direction so that this will be a success.
Yeah, I mean, you've indicated that some of these alkaline deposits can be really world-class, large-scale uh, mines, gold mines. And so I guess the main thing is getting into production, getting the cash flow coming so they can build and develop that. And that's getting over that hump as going from a junior explorer to a producer is no easy task. But okay, well, so there's hope there at least, and selling at 23 cents in U.S. money the last I checked. So Novo Resources, a company that you were directly involved with, a few years back. They've had some difficulties, but they seem as though maybe they're making some progress. Would you comment on that?
Yeah, look, recently we've completely reoriented the company back to being an exploration
Yeah.
company. And we do have some good assets that we're pursuing right now. But before I start with that, let me tell you, we were one of these companies that decided to go down the path of trying to become a producer. And that was around the Beaton's Creek project in Western Australia, so up at a town called Nullagine. And
Mhm.
we secured the mill at that Millennium had there that we used to produce, and we were successful in producing about 2.5 tons of gold in the space of about 18 months or so.
Mhm.
But the problems we faced were just unbelievably numerous. First of all, it was right in the middle of COVID.
Yes.
I couldn't go to site. I think they opened up Australia sometime latter part of 2022. That was the first time I went to site, and it was about the time that things were winding down.
Yeah.
Um, Grade control was a huge issue. Basically, the original plan of ripping the ore and keeping a fairly tight control over dilution flew out the window, and the team at site decided to blast the ore and dilute the grades, also free up gold, which in my view is probably a problem because once you get free particles of gold, they're hard to kind of scoop up and recover, and even as you put it through the mill.
Mhm.
So look, it was the biggest challenge though, Jay, was people. We tried to do that in the middle of one of the tightest labor markets
Yeah, I was going to say
in
labor costs
history.
went through the roof, as I recall.
It was unbelievable. I remember the wages when we first looked at starting to go into production. The wages we set in October 2021, they doubled by October 2022, and
Wow.
they continued to go up after that. It was absolutely brutal. Okay. We saw, sorry, in 2020 going into 2021, and then even further increase in 2022. It was brutal. Why? Because the iron business was going gangbusters.
Uh-huh.
Iron prices were through the roof. Every time we would hire somebody, a geologist or some process engineer or whatever, they get scalped by the iron ore companies, and we'd have to start again and start again.
Oh, I see.
It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. Never want to go through that again in my life. Yeah. But look, what we've decided is with the team that we've kept, our skill set is exploration. We do have some high quality projects that we're tackling. We've basically struck agreements on three different projects that we're pursuing right now. Tubabura, which is up in northwest New South Wales. It's really actually part of the Victorian Goldfields, an extension of it that goes off in that up in that direction, and it has a very high grade, flavor to it, like Fosterville. So we're
Mhm.
looking at this long forgot gold prospect that I think has some earmarks of a Fosterville. Or is there any guarantee we'll find the next Fosterville? No,
Yeah.
but it looks like a good project, and it's a cheap entry point, and we got a good team doing some work there right now.
Good.
Look, John Bull over in the far eastern part of
Uh-huh.
of the country. There it's a reduced intrusive system. So think of Yukon
Hmm.
geology
Yeah.
in Australia.
Yeah.
It's the first time that any company's really tackled a project like this in recent times. And I really like John Bull. The geochemistry we're seeing suggests there's a big reduced intrusive type system there. We're going to test it for the first time here soon. And then the other system we have is the Onslow, which is up in northern Western Australia. And this is a district that nobody's really done any serious exploration, but shows all the hallmarks of a very large, perhaps IOCG type system,
Oh, okay.
which Australia is quite famous for. So we've got three good projects there. Are we still looking for others? Yes. I'm always looking for new opportunities, and our geologic team is out there beating the bushes.
Well, and I should mention $28 million market cap in US money, 8 cents a share, folks. I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep. I
yeah,
bought some shares the other day, actually. Yeah.
8 cents a share in US money. And, you know, Eskay Mining is a name. Maybe quickly, that sort of was last year, not too much went on there. And of course, with all these companies, well, most of these companies, it's a matter of having the money to put holes in the ground too. At these share prices, a lot of companies don't want to dilute their shareholders into oblivion. So, but Eskay Mining you were pretty high on that at one point in time. I think you still like the geologically still like the prospect.
I love the geology. I mean, it's right in the heart of the Golden Triangle, and what's not to love? It's got the same geology that you see up at Eskay Creek, but we also have, Bruce Jack and KSM off to the east of us. So we
Yeah.
kind of have both types of geology at play. We went in there in 2020 looking at VMS systems, the high grade, high precious metal value VMS systems. And we were quite successful. We had a great drill run with TB and Jeff in particular. We tried to test some other targets, with mixed results. There were some that delivered okay results, like Cumberland, for example, that need follow-up. But by and large, we lost our footing. We lost momentum in 2022 when we didn't hit as much mineralization as we hoped. I think the market viewed that very dimly, and probably rightly so. Well, okay, let's hit the reset button. This is what companies have to do sometimes. Okay, so one of the outcomes of our BLEG program back in 2020 was identification of a very large BLEG anomaly in the southern part of the property. It's up in the higher elevation. Okay, so you get in there, say late June, July, in that time period. It's not something you can just run in May and get access to because of the snow cover and stuff. But we managed to get some work done in this part of the property in 2024. We sent a crew out there to do some prospecting, and lo and behold, they find some of the most high grade initial rock chip samples I've ever seen in my career. They basically found extremely high grade gold silver veins and vein networks, breccias, a lot of different forms of quartz carbonate sulfide veins in a broad area. This area expands probably 5 or 6 kilometers across. So you got C10 and Vermilion, and then this TM zone, we call it, which are about across, it's about 5 kilometers. It was only a short program. We need to do more work. So we're going to send that crew back in and try to follow up on these high grade results, see if we can't better define some drill targets. Who knows, maybe late this season we go in there with the drill and we test this high grade. Now, what is this high grade? Look, I have mixed views. It could be something like Bruce Jack, which is immediately to the east. Kind of looks like that, but it also looks a bit like veins that you might see associated with an underlying porphyry system as well. So don't know exactly what the mineralization is associated with, but either outcome could be a very good discovery.
Yeah, you've added some exploration talent, some technical talent there too. Since you first
we'll call it borrowing some of the more seasoned prospectors of the region there.
Yeah,
I don't name names because I don't want other folks it might get upset that we're borrowing good help, but we're doing it on the up and up. We just don't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's there's hope there as well. 17 cents, $29 million market cap. Switching over, I should mention that Lion One's in Fiji. I don't know if we mentioned that. But then looking at the next company I want to ask you about, Firefox Gold. For goodness sakes, it's in Finland. I think Finland's a safe jurisdiction, at least the last I checked. 2.5 cents in US money. $5 million market cap. Agnico Eagle, I think, is a pretty good sized shareholder. Very much interested in one of their projects anyway, and they have a whole slew of projects in the Greenstone Belt there in Finland. They don't have any money though, Quentin, it seems to me.
It is a chronic problem. Look, I mean, of the companies that we've talked about so far, Lion One, does have backing from its lender, Navari, so that's a good thing. They've raised money here recently. Hopefully that's enough to get them going in the right direction. Okay. Novo has access to money. We sold, I'm a director for all clarity and of Eskay. We sold about 750,000 shares of San Cristobal Mining, which is a private. Last year, it raised the funds that we're using to do this exploration now, and we have about 1.25 million shares left. What's that worth? Probably 15-20 million Canadian dollars. Okay, so the company is cashed up. It's in good shape. Eskay has I think around 2 million last I checked, somewhere in there, which is enough to get this field season going. and get some work done. If we decide to drill, yeah, we're probably going to have to look at ways to raise money. Is it going to be a placement? Don't know. Is it going to be maybe a deal on part of the property? Maybe that's another avenue. Don't know yet. Okay, so there's access to money there, but I will tell you that Firefox, wowza, talk about a company that's it's down to fumes, okay, but it has a discovery, and this is just
Yeah,
the frustrating aspect of the whole junior space right now. Good companies that have good discoveries that don't have money, even
yeah,
if they have a good partner like Agnico. I mean, look at this. How many companies can wave their hands and say, "Hey, we got Agnico at our back"?
no,
The Mustajarvi project, which is probably the high grade focus of the company and should be, looks like it could be a few 100,000 ounces. And it's right next to a highway. Okay, it's
yeah,
just south of the Kittila mine, or it's a ways south. It could be a satellite for Kittila. Okay, and Agnico is operating there, so yeah, like yes, this is
yeah,
a high quality discovery in the right neighborhood. The company needs money. I don't know what the plans are to raise money, but it's like a lot of things. It's like when your battery is dead, you kind of got to throw some jumper cables on it and
yeah,
fire the darn thing up again. It's just the way
yeah.
it works.
I'm going to have to talk to them sometime and see what they're thinking because they've had some really good intercepts, some good results, drill results, as I recall.
Sure. Yep.
Just you would think in normal circumstances that would have brought money into the coffers. They should have been able to raise money, but for
Yep.
whatever reason, well, we know that this market's still in the doldrums. Okay, so moving on to Japan, Irving Resources, 17 cents in U.S. money, $13 million market cap with a very unique business model. Silicon flux. Talk to us a little bit, real quickly about the business model, and then Newmont Mining, Sumitomo, also major shareholders. I know this is one you like, and you're also involved, I think, with that as a director.
Yep. Director. Yep. Correct. So look, in this market, it's really nice to have the partnerships that we do. So at Yamagana, both Newmont and Sumitomo Corporation are joint venture partners, and that takes a lot of the heat off of funding.
Hmm.
To be frank, to drill down there, it's 700-800 meter holes. It's going to be expensive, and having that kind of joint venture horsepower is necessary. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm really glad to be in the position we are, and they are drilling right now. They're drilling holes. I think they're on the first full hole of this year. They drilled two last year,
Hmm.
but they're in the first full hole of this year. And look, the goal there is to find the next Hishikari. Okay, so that's a big prize, big target. Up in Hokkaido, we have an earn-in agreement with JX, which is, most people don't even know who JX. It's the
Yeah.
biggest mining house in Japan. Okay,
Oh,
this is this is the biggest. This is as big as they come. And the beauty there is that having JX at our back means that permitting things like this are easily achievable. We also brought on a former member of the JX team onto our team to help expedite permitting of a silica flux operation. As you
hmm.
said, what is a silica flux? Well, look, there's a lot of smelters across Japan. These are smelters for copper and lead and zinc and things like this, and all of them need silica flux to
Hmm.
operate. Okay, when you have silica flux that has gold and silver in it, that gold and silver comes out during the smelting process, and it's an added benefit. Okay, so basically, what we're looking for is silica material that has gold and silver in it that could
Hmm.
be recovered as a byproduct of the process. Yes, it's probably higher dollar value than the silica itself, but the point is you don't have to build a mill, you don't have to
Right.
permit a tailings facility, you don't have to do a lot of things. Okay, so we have this earn-in joint venture now with JX. We're delighted to have them. It's
Hmm.
helping reduce our spend. Does the company have a heap of money? No, we got enough money to be dangerous. I would like to see the company have a bit of money, a bit more money, so that we have, we'll call it, ability to do some autonomous work, testing a few
Hmm.
ideas that I have.
Hmm.
Okay, but that'll come with time. The gold market's picking up, and I'm feeling pretty good. We basically can fast track gold move into production at this point.
Is it possible that JX and Irving might have some near-term cash flow?
It's not going to be like super near term, but we're talking like 2 or 3 years. Yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
something like.
So because the flux is needed, and if you happen to have some gold and silver with it, that's
Yep.
what you're looking for. All
Yeah.
right. All right. So, I mean, that's not a lot of risk there. You're not spending a lot. You're not going to dilute your shareholders to oblivion, I think. I like that one a lot for sure. All right. Another name, an intrusive gold system, Tectonic Gold in British Columbia. No, they're in Yukon.
Alaska. Alaska.
They're in Alaska. That's right, across the border there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, we're looking at what I think a 4 cent share, something like that, 16 million market cap. A lot of shares out. I think quite a few shares. Intrusive. I know there was a problem initially, or at least that was something in your mind that had to be solved, and that was the metallurgical issue up there. But I think that issue's at least
Quinton Resources.
not an
Very.
issue from your point of view.
Yep.
Very potentially very large system, an intrusive system. So what are your thoughts about Tectonic now?
Tectonic is one of these stories where I can almost just like say with 100% certainty, yes, they have a discovery in hand. Okay, every single hole that's been drilled on that property has intercepts of gold mineralization. Now the company's tried to work on this thing for 2 years now, but they always do it in a shoestring store way. They
Uh-huh,
kind of
uh-huh.
go into late season. Usually they're going against the grain because most people are coming out of the field at that time of year. And it's just been a bit of a headbang. Okay, they go in, they drill some holes, they get some decent results. The market goes, okay, interesting. Oh, they're going to need more money. Done.
Yeah,
It's a crying shame. But what do they have? Okay, I feel that the drilling they did last year, in particular this drill hole at a place called Alpha Bowl, was an absolutely critical discovery for the company. This hole, which is the northernmost, kind of off by itself. I mean, there's a couple other holes not too far away, historic holes. But this hole at Alpha Bowl, they drilled hit I think it was around 65 meters of a gram and a half or a gram point six or something. It was a short hole. Okay. It ended in mineralization.
hmm,
I've seen the pictures of it. It looks great. Okay. It looks like a classic reduced intrusive type system. Think valley. Okay. Like this looks like a valley type discovery, yet they didn't get any more holes in last year.
yeah,
Okay. Got this one swing at the thing and they nailed it, but then they didn't get to follow up. What do they need to do this year? I'm going to be very blunt. Okay. If they go in late season again, I'm going to absolutely pull my hair out. Like, that's just crazy. Can't do that anymore. Get into the project as quickly as you can early season, even if you don't have every single dollar in the bank that you need to last the full season, get in there. Okay.
yeah,
Drill some holes. I want to see the company go back and drill some holes, maybe 3 or 4 holes at Alpha Bowl that are like 300 or 400 meters long. Why do I say that? Because Scott Birdall at Snowline,
hmm,
after hitting what he knew, and I'm telling you, I knew too. Like in October 2021, they hit those first intercepts at Valley. And I'm like, that is the real deal. Okay. And Scott knew it too. He went in there early 2022. He was so eager to get in. I think they started drilling in mid or late May or something. You know, they came out with news in June. Oh, 400 meters of little specks of visible gold and blah, blah, blah. I
yeah,
mean, it was a crazy story. It shot up like a rocket. Okay. Imagine if Tectonic does it. Imagine if they get in there, drill 3 or 4 holes, and with luck, they hit similar visuals to what Snowline saw.
yeah,
And I think it's possible at Alpha Bowl because the rock sure as heck, it wasn't core drilling, it was RC drilling, but the rock sure as heck looks like the real deal. Okay.
mhm.
I think the company stands a good chance of replicating that kind of a story if they get out there and start the drill. All right.
Real early. Don't wait till everybody's coming home. So, I mean,
Exactly.
how soon could they get up there, Quentin? Generally, what's the time frame?
It is Western Alaska. One
Yeah,
one important aspect, look, Donlin Creek, which is probably the biggest undeveloped gold deposit in North America, is a very short distance away. So
yeah,
there is a synergy. I think once you see a decision made around Donlin Creek, any deposit like this that's in proximity is going to be a must-have for anybody in this area.
uh,
So that's a big selling point. But I would say probably late May, early June,
yeah,
they can get in there.
What were they
Uh,
going up there in late August, September, or something like that last year or
oh
last couple
my
of years?
God, they've been going up there, and the problem going in August, like mid to late August, is that's when that bloody fog starts picking up.
Oh,
Trying to fly airplanes in and land supplies and stuff when it's kind of foggy and misty and even starting to freeze a bit, maybe, it's just a pain in the neck. Okay, get the bloody thing going. Okay, get in there and start drilling
all
this.
right. And just go up there and trust you're going to raise some money and get active, I guess.
Yeah.
One more I'd like to ask you about that I think is one of my personal favorites. I don't know how you feel about it. Western Alaska.
Oh
Western
my
Alaska
gosh.
Minerals selling at 41 cents, but there's not many shares out. It's only a $17 million market cap, and they have a resource up there. It's almost close to 1,000
It's
grams per
close to a
ton,
kilo silver equivalent
almost
per
a
ton.
kilo silver equivalent CRD system, carbonate
Look,
replacement system.
for what was it? Maybe two seasons of drilling. They came out with a resource of something like 70 odd million ounce silver equivalent at a super high grade, like a kilo.
Extremely high grade.
And okay, so there you got this discovery, right, at Water Pump Creek, and then you got this fault that seems apparently cuts the thing off.
Yeah.
Where is it on the south side? Well, they thought the rock had shifted, and so they kind of tested over, I think it was right lateral, so they tested off, what would it be? I think to the west or to the east, or so I can't remember which
Yeah.
direction. They changed it in a different direction. Okay, but now they're thinking, oh no, the thing is just normal offsets, vertical
Okay.
offset, and the thing is basically due south of where they were drilling. Okay, so they've kind of got a new geologic concept that I think is valid, and they need to get in there and poke some holes down and see if they can find the rest of the deposit. Think of Water Pump Creek as the tip of your finger. Okay, they found
Uh-huh.
that part. The
Uh-huh.
rest of it is immediately south of it somewhere. And when they find it, we'll all know it, and it will be a world-class deposit. There's no question.
Yeah.
So I'm very encouraged by the kind. Like I think they need to do some creative work. If they listen to this video, God help them. But I think they got smart people there for sure. But there are some new techniques that could be very valuable to a system like this. I saw some information on muon tomography.
Mm.
Muon tomography. It's a mouthful. The other day, and it's basically a way to look for massive sulfide deposits like this, in this case, a CRD system,
Hmm.
by using muons that travel through the Earth, through Earth, basically through the rock. Okay, and they can see deposits in the ground. It's one of the most amazing techniques I've seen recently. I've suggested the company use this. I hope they listen to this. Maybe you never know.
Have you talked to them about it yet or not?
Oh, I sent them an email and
Okay.
told them about my discussion, so I hope they follow up with them.
Oh, I
Yeah,
think, yeah, I mean, it's in the Western, that's in Alaska too. How soon can they get in there to work?
about the same time of year, but
About the same time as
early
Tectonic.
June.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So those are some of the low priced ones I wanted to ask you about because, I think the opportunities with them, if there's good exploration potential and maybe roll the dice and buy some shares and who knows? I mean, anyway, okay. So now looking at some of the more successful stories, Goliath Resources, just amazing. And it just keeps getting better, it seems. I mean, talk to us about that. And now we're talking about market caps that are over 100 million for the most part, 158 million US dollars, $1.14 today as we talk. Yeah, tell us about Goliath. It's a
Okay.
world-class discovery, it seems to
Yeah,
me.
absolutely. Look, it's evolved over time. They thought the sure bet zone was the be all end all, for the first couple of years, and then they started to hit other loads below that, like a stack load system.
Yeah,
And more recent discovery is this Bonanza lode or ledge that they found. It's pretty remarkable some of the grades they've hit. They've hit a lot of, ounce plus stuff, a lot of visible gold, and they really are starting to get a feel for where the center of gravity is for the overall system. What do I mean by that? Well, look, in these types of systems, these vein, call it load type systems that are associated with an intrusion somewhere, they're starting to see the connections come together. There is a likely causative intrusion, that they've now identified, and it itself is a target. Like there's mineralization in the
Yeah.
dikes and stuff that come off of it. But they've also found where this thing comes up and then where the likely fluids, the pathways they followed. Okay, this is important because now this year when they go out and drill, they can sharpshoot the higher grade part of the system.
Uh,
And really, I think they're going to knock it out of the park this year. Yes, they've got an aggressive program plan this year. They always have an aggressive program, but this year, I would say with high confidence, they're going to poke some holes into some really nice high grade. When you start hitting multi-ounce stuff, and especially in fairly, continuous fat ledge, loads like
mhm.
this, you can build up ounces quick. So I think the company's on the right track. It's going to be an exciting year.
Yeah, the widths, the mining widths, little different than what we talked
Yeah,
about.
5, 6, 7 meters.
It's not
Exactly.
line,
They're
it's not a skinny little vein
no,
system. It's something much bigger in
exactly. Yep.
economics. And so if they could actually get in and develop or discover, possibly develop an intrusion that's down below there, could be like a valley intrusion or something.
Well, yeah, there's dikes coming
Yeah,
off this
all over.
intrusion.
Yeah,
And the gold fluids seem to have followed the dikes. Okay, so they have actually hit, where they cross the dikes, they've actually hit gold mineralization in these things, which is really interesting.
yeah.
So the dikes themselves are a likely target for the company this year.
That's a happy story. That's really a good one.
Yep.
Newfound Gold, the share price has been a disappointment to me. I don't know what's going on there, except I think maybe it's not like Goliath. It's a more complex system, more difficult probably to mine and to know what you have there. But talk to us
No,
about that. $1.17, 234 million market cap.
everybody will make it out to be as just enigmatic deposit. Oh, it's too complicated, too high grade,
Yeah,
or challenging, too erratic, blah, blah, blah. Holy cow. Look, they did trenching. Okay. They can see where the high grade is. They pretty much nailed it. They can draw, very tight wireframes around the high grade veins, the portions of the veins that are high grade, I will say. Okay. This is a high grade system. The resource that was published was, in my view, it did not honor the geology of this type of system. They basically block modeled this thing like it was a big disseminated system. Why? Because I don't know. Were they just afraid of putting the hard work in? That their interpretation might be wrong. How do they treat the high grade? Like, long story short, you can make any deposit look bad if you block model it and kind of start capping grade and limiting the projection of any high grade within your model. And like it's just like taking a big club to a seal and just pounding the seal. Okay, you get a fur coat out at the end of the day, but you got a dead seal. Anyway, look, the
Quentin, let me just ask you just for those of us who don't know the lingo, block model. What do you mean by a block model?
well, okay, if you got veins that are, a meter or two wide,
Right?
and in some places they're wider, okay, but when you're dealing with fairly discrete high grade,
Yeah,
then you model it with 5 meter by 5 meter by 5 meter blocks. Okay, you're going to dilute the grade
sure, of
of
course.
that tremendously. Okay, and that's basically what I'm seeing. I would love to see a 3D model that includes the drill data, the wireframing that was done. I know that they had a geologist that did wireframing of the veins. You can see in their news releases, they have these very detailed models of
Yes.
all.
Uh-huh.
And then I'd also like to see the block model that the independent QP put together. Okay, why? Because I would sit there with it for like 3 or 4 hours and study, draw sections and study each intercept of high grade and how that translated into the block model. My hunch is, I can't say I've seen it yet, but my hunch is they are grossly understating the likely gold content. This was a phenomena at Fosterville. You want to hear a crazy story, okay? When I was helping Kirkland Lake, and I was helping Eric too before that, but they were drilling the high grade at Fosterville, and there was a moment sometime around the acquisition where there was a lot of angst because there were some people that said they could not put a resource or a reserve to the high grade at Fosterville. I mean, imagine that. That's
Wow.
crazy.
I mean, that
Okay.
was a company
And
making.
and and they were so much paranoia. They were like, okay, we got to top cut this, just top cut it, heavily and make sure we don't, screw this up because they didn't, the last thing they wanted, was to have less gold coming out the mill than the model projected, right? So
Oh, okay.
guess what? That's exactly, they had just the opposite. They had way more gold come out. You want to hear the craziest story I've ever heard in my career in the mining space?
Yeah.
So there was so much gold coming out at Fosterville. I think in when was it? That was 2018. Or yeah, 2018. The when they pour the gold at the end of, like, they have the elution circuit where they strip the gold and then pour the gold. They were getting they had gravity gold recovery too, but they were getting so much gold out every day, and it was so much more than they expected that the ingot molds they had couldn't hold the gold that they were pouring. There was too much gold coming out. They had to weld sleeves around the ingot molds to extend them higher so they could make bigger bars of gold because they basically under projected how much gold the mine would produce. I mean, talk about a stupid problem to have. That's what happens when you get into these high grade deposits. It's
Mhm.
just notorious ground for underestimate. Am I guaranteeing there's an underestimate? No, I'd like to see the data, okay, but just my gut says that the amount of gold there has been underestimated.
Yeah. Is Eric Sprott still a big investor there, as far as you know?
Yeah, Eric's in, and I talked to him. I think it was last week, and he's been buying shares even at
Yeah.
Newfound.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I can remember before Fosterville, I remember that this is a Crocodile Gold or some company that had that. They were
Newmarket,
struggling with it.
Newmarket. Yeah,
Yeah. And so what you're saying is you think there's more there than what they're recognizing, or they're just, it's more work, as you say, rather than just clubbing it like a seal.
yeah. They need they they need to go in and in my view, look, they should have started mining or like moved towards development and mining a couple of years ago. Okay, they drilled like 100,000, maybe 200,000 meters, and it was clear the Keat zone was holding together. Like there was a deposit there. Start mining, like figure out how to build a mine at that point, even if it only does say 100,000 ounces a year. Like who cares? Like if you start mining and you get great cash flow, which this thing should,
Yeah.
deliver, then you can drill the rest of this, through the cash flow that comes out of the operation. And the problem we have in this day and age is spending endless money on drilling and drilling and drilling, and
Yeah.
you know how that goes. Yeah.
Oh, they've done a huge amount of drilling there. Tremendous. Not, I
Yeah.
don't know how many hundreds of thousands of meters. So I remember you saying that this could be several Fostervilles when you first discovered it.
I
When
still believe it. Jay,
you still believe
think
it?
about it. They only drilled like a little, you know, look at the long section in the news release or the
Yeah,
43-101. The all these resources are within like 200-300 meters of
the
surface. But
surface. Yeah, yeah.
these systems go down like heck. I think Fosterville's down 1,600 meters or something. Like they go down forever. You know,
So they're
so
still mining at Fosterville and doing well, huh?
yeah, I don't know. I don't keep
I
up with it, but
keep up
yeah.
with it. Yeah. Okay. All right. We better move on here. Okay, so Nevada King, maybe real quickly, what are your thoughts on that?
Vatican, they drilled around the Atlanta area there for a long time, like kind of infill. It was getting a bit long a tooth. I mean, I gotta say, yes, they did expand it. Yes, they're finding extensions, but they really needed to test new targets. And the company kind of ran lower and lower on money over time, like everyone. But they did finally start to branch out and test new targets. Now,
Yeah.
I haven't I don't know where they're at with things, but I think this year in particular, their focus is going to be to try to find new discoveries, new deposits. I know that they have a great deal of geophysics and
Hmm.
you know work that they've done to define new targets. I think they have a long inventory of targets to test. I'd love to see those tested because I think there's going to be more to be found there. You don't see a one-off deposit like that usually by itself. Usually there's more around. So
Hmm. All right, $72 million market cap. I guess that's they have some money. They have money to drill. You think they're okay?
I think they are. I don't know for sure. I
For
really
sure.
don't know.
Yeah. My impression is that they're okay for this year, probably. But okay, well, let's talk about the most successful one I attribute to you and helping me find it put in my portfolio, Snowline Gold. And you talked about Scott Birdall a little while ago, how he went in there so aggressively. Of course, Scott's a brilliant guy. I mean, I met him in Vancouver, thanks to you. Invited him to the Metals Investor Forum, and he's just, I mean, he's a class act every which way. He's extremely well educated. How did a guy from all these different world-class universities come out of the Yukon? I mean, that's where he grew up. I said, you know, you should be a hillbilly. I mean, you're not sophisticated
he's a
guy,
smart kid. Like
very smart, very really kind, decent human being if ever I met him.
look, it's
Just
a
a,
case of the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. His dad's a bright guy too. Okay.
yeah, right.
And I've known his dad, Ron, for years and years. And I first met Scott. I can't remember exactly how old he was, but I remember meeting him way back, probably 15 years ago or something. And I watched him go through university. He went to MIT and then King Abdullah's University there.
Yeah.
And like not everybody can pull that off. Okay. He had aspirations at one point to he thought, well, mining's dead. This is like 2014 and mining's dead. I better look at other industries to get in, like ecotourism and stuff. And I was like, please, 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 don't, no. And he didn't, fortunately. But he basically took the portfolio of projects that he and his dad put together.
Mm-hmm.
They took them to market in 2020 or no 2021, right? They went out and they drilled Jupiter, which got some really good results. I do think there's the follow up there, but the cool thing he did was he went in right at the end of the season in 2021. He slung a drill down to Valley, and he poked, I think it was 4 holes into the Valley, the edge of what turned out to be the Valley discovery.
Right.
And of those 4 holes, I think 3 of them delivered over 100 gram meter. Okay, so they were like, it was.
I remember.
Well, there's something here. And I remember kind of pounding the table. And Kevin and Tavi were buying shares of Snowline, every day for like 5 or 6 months there. And then he comes out in 2022 in May, and like I said earlier, he went in and he did a grid drill program over there. What the intrusive target? He was like, "Yep, we're just gonna, carpet bomb this thing," and it was an unbelievable success. Like one hole after another of just hundreds of, like 300-400 meters of 1, 2, almost 3 grams in some places.
Incredible.
It is.
Yeah. I mean, one of the highest grade intrusives perhaps ever discovered, would you say?
Yeah, it's up there. It's definitely in the top rank of reduced intrusive systems. I think Giroy over in Kyrgyzstan is probably the highest grade one I know of, and there's smaller ones like Kidston in Australia and stuff. But this as far as a big tonnage, large, this is probably the higher grade.
It's going to be more than 10 million ounces, would you say?
My gut says it already is. Yeah, I think drilling they did last year. I think as I understand it, they're going to put out another MRE here soon.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if I think it was 7.3 the last one or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised to see it get to 10. Maybe it doesn't get all the way to 10. I don't know. But it doesn't bother me because I think that they will be 10 plus pretty easily at some point. The thing I really like is there's an extension. They drilled that whole I think it was 115 off to the northeast, and they hit a long interval, not huge grade, like 0.5, 0.6 grams, but it shows that there's an open-ended extension, and the system is trying to reach over to something else. Okay, now that's the direction of Gracie, and to this day, nobody explained why that geochemical anomaly is over there.
Right.
My gut says there's another, these things are like an upside down cow, right? The udder, it won't go there. But think of these little fingers poking up. Okay, to me, there's something else kicking up over there. So everybody's, well, Snowline's found it all. It's dead. No, nope.
No. Well, it's already got a world-class deposit, and you have to wonder if the big guys don't have their eyes on that thing. B2 Gold is a big shareholder. They seem to want to stay where they are, keep they're obviously interested in it.
Sure.
I mean, it's going to be fun to
It's a
watch it. I mean,
must-have.
here,
It's a
here,
must-have, Jay.
I can't get rid of it. I mean, I've sold some shares in my portfolio, but I said, no, you can't allow you to sell yourself. I mean, it's hard not to sell it. You want cash to do some other things, but
You
this thing,
look at the you look at the first few years of production, it'll probably be, I don't know, 600 or 700,000 ounces per year.
wow,
So yeah,
you
give
gotta,
yeah,
you got, you gotta stay with it. And there's
yeah.
still loads of upside, not to mention what is the other one is sort of an epizonal, orogenic system, the first one they drilled,
Jupiter is it's a shallow, so epizonal
right?
orogenic system. It's not been drilled off in any way, shape, or form. I think they probably need to refocus a bit and do a little bit more tighter drilling, because I think what they're going to find is there's going to be shoots of higher grade within that system.
Hmm.
Uh, and if you drill between the shoots or away, like from the main structure, you're not going to hit as good a grade. And I think that's what's happened here
Yeah.
recently.
Oh,
But I think if they get back on track and actually, put together the geology, these shoots, these high grade shoots, they could find something really impressive. Yeah.
yeah, but there's a chance there's a lot more intrusive mineralization there, I think, if I understand you.
Yes, there's
Yeah,
also other
off to the
intrusive.
northeast or,
Yeah, correct.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right, we better move along here. Sitka Gold's another intrusive, very nice story that's perked up the last year or so. That's in the Yukon as well.
No, it's in the yes, sorry, it's in the Yukon. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
140 million market cap I saw today, 42 cents in US money. So
It's starting to get some recognition, which is good. Okay. And I think they've done a pretty good job. They came out with a resource very early, and it was, they'd only drilled the shallow part of the
yeah,
Black and Niger areas, and it was a low grade resource. But when they started to hit high grade in latter part of 2023, that's when we jumped in. I always like to see the grade in these systems, and they're clearly showing there's some good grades in this particular intrusive system. And they drilled some more holes, largely through, you know, following that high grade, and they were able to upgrade their resource dramatically late last year. I think they came out with 2.8 million ounces, a little over
yeah,
a gram. That's a great trend. I think they'll continue to do that. I think, we could see this grow by a few million ounces every year, every drill season, successive
right.
drill season. And if they keep chasing the high grade, I wouldn't be surprised if they maintain a grade that's, it's probably in the 1 to 2 gram range, rather than say a sub-gram deposit like some of these can be.
Yeah, I think they're pretty well funded and they're looking to do pretty aggressive program this year, as I
30
understand it.
30,000 meters, if I
Yeah,
remember.
well, that's good. Corco, I've met him many years ago. I'm really happy for him. He's having a very successful run
Okay.
here. Okay, just a couple more real quickly. Eloro Resources, Bolivia. This is one you know a lot about.
Yes.
$55 million market cap. We're talking about a silver tin rich polymetallic deposit, very unique. And I'm wondering, besides those metals, are there some critical metals that they might have there as well?
Are you
Possibly.
talking like germanium, gallium,
Yeah,
indium kind of
some of
stuff?
those things.
Um, that's a good question. My recollection is, I think I talked to Bill Pearson about this a couple of years ago, and I think there is some indium, okay,
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's widely distributed or if
right.
it's
All right.
only
Well, but that looks like a world-class
it is. Look,
situation.
this is a case where the initial resource that was put out was used very widely spaced drill holes, and unfortunately, that heavily discounted the grade. Okay, if you look at the weighted average grade of all the drill holes, all the drill intercepts that were reported by the company up to the point of that resource, you get about 105-gram silver equivalent. Well, the resource came in like half of that. Okay.
Hmm.
How does this happen? Okay. In my brain, it doesn't work. Okay. There's something went wrong. And from what I can see is that the modeling they did between drill holes, because they're widely spaced, it didn't the areas that were in between the drill holes simply were not um, you know, filled with grades that are commensurate with the actual system. The
Uh-huh.
computer discounted the grades in those areas.
Uh-huh.
Okay, now they're infilling those areas right now. They're doing infill drilling, and guess what they're finding? They're finding intercepts that are very much in line with the previous drilling.
Right, right,
So I think what we're going to see here is if the company focuses and they drill up, say, 150 or 200 million tons near surface that's running 105 gram silver equivalent, which, some people might say, oh, it sounds low grade. No, like it's a percent and a half ish zinc. It's, a half percent lead and then, 30, 40 gram silver. That's the grade that we have at San Cristobal, and we make absolutely great money. Okay. And, Iska looks very, very similar. Now, they also have the tin component too.
yeah,
Okay. They have the tin porphyry, which is kind of along the west side of the silver lead zinc zone.
right.
And the porphyry is a whole different beast. It's kind of noodling its way up in the middle of the geology. Speaking around the economics of that, I don't have much I can even say at this point because I don't know how big it is. I don't know what
Yeah,
kind of
right.
it's going to be. But having a tin system right in the middle of this can't be a bad thing. It's going to be a value add thing.
Yeah. Or do you think they're going to be exploring the tin component more aggressively, or are they
A
the
lot of the
focus
drilling
right now is just getting that starter pit
they're doing
delineated?
the infill drilling, but some of the infill actually, wanders over in that tin area. So like in this last news release, I think there was one hole that had not only had, lead zinc silver, I think up high, but it had deeper, it had some nice tin intervals. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
All right, one more real quickly. Hannan Metals in Peru. Now, when you first told me about this story, it was a sedimentary copper, copper silver story.
yeah.
Looked very good. I don't know why that never, I guess permitting and everything was just impossible in
It,
Peru.
it has
But
been
then
a
they found
challenge.
this other system, this out of the blue almost. It was a porphyry system, major porphyry system that they're onto now, and it seems like the market likes it.
A
I mean,
little more of a porphyry system, but let me touch on this. So first of all, Mike Hudson, who runs Hannon, I've known for many years,
yeah,
good friend of mine at this point, and I was advising the company for a few years. Now, the time frame that I was an advisor was right before COVID or right into COVID, and I went down to Peru. In fact, that was the last trip I made before having to come
yeah, I
home and
remember it well.
run to Walmart and buying toilet paper.
You were almost stuck in Peru for the rest of your life.
Just about got stuck there. And when I was down there, I showed them how to his crew how to take blood samples, these clay fraction blood samples. And the discussion, I told them, I said, look, this part of Peru, which is the east side of the Andes,
Yeah,
really hasn't too much exploration. There's a lot of vegetation. I said, why don't you do blegs? Just bleg the whole belt, And then COVID comes along. They don't have anything better to do than sit there
yeah,
and bleg. So they spent the better part of, I think, a year or two blegging this whole corridor. And that's how they stirred up these anomalies. Okay, now the copper anomaly, sure, it's there. The copper system hasn't been advanced. It is a challenge to permit. You got a flat sheet like copper deposit, and just getting in and being able to drill, a large, we'll call it an expansive copper system, in an area where you have a lot of people and other,
yeah,
conflicting social issues,
yeah,
uh, hasn't gone so well. But this area down at I think the tenement package is Belen or Belen or something.
yeah,
Uh, I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, it's not in an area that's a problem. You can
no,
permit. They actually got a permit for some of their porphyry targets, but it's the Provisto target, which is on this tenement, that I like the best. Okay, Provisto looks to be an alkaline gold system, a very large alkaline gold system, like a Cripple Creek type system. It's
yeah,
a huge footprint. It's like 5 kilometers in diameter.
yeah,
All of the images coming off of this thing are just screaming with gold. The first trench they dug had 69 meters of 2.5 grams or something, just obscene.
yeah,
You know, and look, I haven't been to site to see it, but I talked to the geo there, Lars at PDAC, and he showed me some of the rocks and these are classic alkaline, weird alkaline volcanic rocks that you would see at Cripple Creek or any of these classic systems. So I think I bought a lot of Hannan after that news came out, and I'm going to hold on for dear life because I think they're onto something absolutely massive.
Yeah, yeah. $113 million market cap, 92 cents in US money. Hannan Metals. Yeah, I guess you probably talk to Mike from time to time, and a
Yeah.
lot of these, I mean, you guys are in touch with the managements of these companies and have some input, obviously as shareholders at Crescat. I really want to thank you, Quinton, for spending so much time with us. I told you half an hour. I think we're more like an hour, so I
Yeah.
apologize if
Take
I'm
care.
really grateful to you. And I want my subscribers and then the larger audience to hear what you have to say about these various companies. But I would ask you maybe, and just before we conclude, I guess people can almost every other week you guys are doing a video sort of going over the companies, and Tavi the management is talking about the macroeconomics, and then you come in on the talking about individual companies like you did here with me today. And people can watch that. It's open to anybody. I think it's they go to crescat.net, the website, they can sign up for it. Is that how it works? They can.
Yeah. And we do videos every other week now. This week is Good Friday, so
Good
we're not
Friday,
doing
so you want. So next
tomorrow.
week, possibly the
Do one
following
next.
week. Yeah. All right. All right, Quinton, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's very, very much appreciated. And all the best to you and your team there at Crescat.
Thanks, Jake. Take care.
You bet.
Okay, man.
All right. Thank you.